In 1838, Maryland's Jesuit priests sold hundreds of men, women, and children to Louisiana sugar plantations to pay off their debts and to raise money for the construction of Georgetown University. This was the second largest sale of human beings in American history. This project refers to the specific group of enslaved people as the GU272. Though the GU272 faced incredible hardship, most didn't perish. They married, raised children, built their own houses, and continued to practice their Catholic faith. Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation freed them in 1863, but they and their descendants would have to negotiate a politically, economically, and culturally hostile landscape for many years to come. The GU272 Memory Project, which is run by American ancestors, has located more than 9,000 GU272 descendants through genealogical research. This presentation introduces the website and the tools anyone can use to start searching for their GU272 ancestor. In the summer of 1838, the Jesuit Catholic school known as Georgetown College had serious financial debts. Also, they wanted to expand their modest campus into a larger entity. At the time, the Jesuits' most valuable assets were the hundreds of slaves who worked their local tobacco plantations. The slaves themselves were Catholics, many having been baptized by Father Thomas Malady, president of Georgetown from 1829 to 1837, or his successor, Father William McSherry. The two priests decided to sell most of the college's enslaved people to raise cash. The Jesuits may have calculated that the cost of owning slaves was now more expensive than hiring paid workers. They were also likely aware that the public sentiment in the District of Columbia was beginning to shift against slavery. Many of the junior priests expressed concerns about the fate of the enslaved people, but the sale went ahead nonetheless. On June 19, 1838, the Jesuits signed a contract with Louisiana sugar plantation owners Jesse Beatty and Henry Johnson. Johnson was a congressman from Louisiana who had previously served his state as a governor and U.S. senator. The contract sealed the fate of approximately 272 women, men, and children, and altered the lives of generations of their descendants. The selling of the GU272 raised $115,000, equivalent to about $3.3 million today, enough to allow the Jesuits to pay off their most pressing debts and eventually transform the modest college into the very prestigious Georgetown University. Determining the fate of the individuals who were sold has often been challenging due to a lack of records, imprecise documentation, and name changes. Although the slaves sold by Georgetown in 1838 collectively came to be known as the GU272, to date, researchers have documented 206 people sent to Louisiana and 108 people who were part of the original sale but remained in Maryland or who were sold elsewhere. After arriving in Louisiana, the enslaved people were split among 3 locations in the vicinity of Baton Rouge. West Oak Plantation in Iberville Parish was owned by Jesse Beatty. A nearby plantation in Maringouin was owned by Henry Johnson, as was Ascension Plantation, later known as Chatham Plantation, in Ascension Parish near Donaldsonville. Northerners and foreign visitors to the South expressed shock at how frequently and with what viciousness slaves were whipped or physically abused. Any slave caught attempting to escape would be severely punished, often permanently maimed or killed outright. The Jesuit priests would have likely known the fate of their fellow Catholics, as accounts of Southern barbarity were common in newspapers and broadsides of the time. A few priests expressed qualms about the morality of human trafficking to Jesuit authorities, although most were concerned with the threat that a heavily Protestant South would undoubtedly present to the slaves' Catholic faith. Writing to the Jesuit Superior General from his home in Newtown, Maryland on October 20, 1838, Father Peter Havermans lamented the loss of the slaves and noted that news of the sale had provoked local negative reactions. Although the money raised by the sale secured financial stability for Georgetown College, the Jesuits experienced a backlash from the negative publicity the sale generated. The same year, Father Malady was recalled to Rome, and in 1839, Pope Gregory XVI barred Catholics from engaging in the business of slavery. Private ownership of slaves and private sales, however, were not specifically forbidden. Approval of the 1838 slave sale was granted subject to several express conditions, including that the families not be separated and that the slaves be permitted the free exercise of their Catholic religion in Louisiana. According to present-day historians at Georgetown University, none of these conditions were ever met. In letters written to Jesuit superiors in Maryland, one priest who accidentally crossed paths with the slaves in Louisiana after the sale bemoaned the fact the slaves couldn't practice Catholicism. After a trip to Louisiana in 1848, Father James Van de Velde wrote to Father Mulady, who by that time had been reinstated as president of Georgetown, and asked him to pay to build a church to, quote, provide for the salvation of these poor people who are now utterly neglected. Van de Velde reported that many of the slaves were given no time to attend Mass, were not being baptized, and were without any religion instruction whatsoever. No evidence suggests that the Maryland Jesuits ever provided the funds requested to build a church. More than 25 years after the sale to Johnson and Beatty, the approximately 80 Georgetown slaves who survived the Civil War were emancipated, both legally and practically, when that conflict came to an end on April 9, 1865. Despite emancipation, many African Americans in the South continued to live in conditions similar to slavery, exacerbated by post-war poverty and later by Jim Crow laws enforcing racial segregation. In later years, from approximately 1916 to 1970, GU272 descendants were among the 6 million African Americans who left the South in search of better lives in other parts of the country. Today, GU272 descendants live across the United States and across the world. The sale of the GU272 was fully documented in original letters and materials that were kept in the university archives, but the history of Jesuit slaveholding hadn't been fully explored by university archivists in the 20th century. In the fall of 2015, as Harvard, Columbia, Brown, and other universities began to admit their past involvement in slavery, students at Georgetown began demanding to know the truth about rumors of past slavery activities on their campus. The university established a working group to investigate the matter. Student demonstrations that fall lent the efforts increased urgency, as did the formation of an independent nonprofit group called Georgetown Memory Project. The Georgetown Memory Project was formed by a group of alumni led by Richard Cellini, a Massachusetts lawyer and entrepreneur in the tech industry. Cellini raised money to hire genealogists to trace descendants of the Georgetown slaves. Genealogists trace more than 200 of the original enslaved people and over 8,000 descendants, both living and deceased. More than 4,000 of these descendants are still alive today. On learning about their connections to the GU272, many descendants have undertaken their own significant genealogical research, which has been added to the project. On April 18, 2017, Georgetown University and the Society of Jesus' Maryland Province apologized for their roles in the 1838 sale of enslaved people. More than 100 descendants attended the ceremony. Georgetown's Mulady Hall was renamed to honor Isaac Hawkins, the first person listed in the 1838 sale agreement. The McSherry Building was renamed for Anne Marie Beecraft, a free woman of color who established a school for black girls in the town of Georgetown in the 19th century. Much more work on this project remains to be done. Using a statistical model developed by a scientist at MIT, Richard Cellini estimated that the original members of the GU272 have collectively produced 12,000 to 15,000 descendants since the 1838 sale. The GU272 Memory Project website is located at the URL gu272.americanancestors.org. It's a free public resource for anyone interested in the GU272 and in African American family history. It features a searchable database of record-based genealogical information on the GU272 and their descendants. It also features PDFs by family groups, which list all the generations in a family, and function-rich family trees. The website also features more than 40 interviews with living descendants of the GU272. The interviews on the website record the life experience of GU272 descendants currently living in Maryland, Louisiana, California, and other locations. Placed alongside the genealogical data and the historical narrative of the GU272, these oral histories are invaluable resources for the descendant community, for genealogists, historians, scholars, and the public at large. The GU272 database is the foundation of the GU272 website. This database allows anyone to search for a GU272 ancestor. The database contains 50 volumes with nearly 100 images, over 10,000 records, and 32,000 searchable names. This database is organized into 50 volumes, a volume for each of the 49 family groups, and one final volume that contains all images of all records for all families. Each family volume lists the descendants of the original families in order by generation. The volume name includes the name of the head of the family, followed by the group number in parentheses. The final volume, entitled Source Documents, contains indexed images of birth, marriage, and death certificates for people who are documented in all the reports in other volumes. The record types that are indexed include birth, baptism, marriage, death, and burial. All available names, including parents and spouses, are included in the index and are searchable. In addition to the searchable database, each of the family groups can be viewed as trees in American Ancestry's, our online family tree builder program. In another part of the website, you'll see the entire ancestor spreadsheet. The genealogists who worked on this project discovered all the ancestral records in the database and created a spreadsheet of all the names and data on the enslaved people. You can download this spreadsheet directly from this website. Various sale-related documents, including the June 19, 1838 sale agreement, stated that the Maryland Jesuits were selling 272 enslaved individuals to purchasers in Louisiana. Even today, historians and commentators uncritically accept the accuracy of this count. However, closer examination has shown that the 1838 sale actually involved and radically reordered the lives and family relationships of at least 314 distinct men, women, and children. Many of these people lived to see the emancipation of slavery. Since many sold were related to one another, and others married one another, the original 314 have been organized into 49 family groups, with the head of the family known as the root person. While there is information in the database and ancestries for all 49 families, the PDFs of family histories on this website cover only 32 families that we could substantially trace forward in time to modern descendants. The 314 individuals have been organized into 49 groups, with each group consisting of one ancestor, known as the root person, and one or more ancestors or descendants who can be identified as being related by blood or by marriage to that root person. For married couples, the root person is the husband if he was one of the GU272 ancestors. If the husband was not a GU272 ancestor, meaning that he died before the 1838 Jesuit slave census, or if he was a free person, not a slave, or unknown, the root person becomes the woman. 32 of the 49 family groups have individual pages on the website. 17 groups have no modern descendants that could be traced, and therefore are not depicted, though their information is available through the downloadable ancestor spreadsheet and is also present in the database. These pages are ordered alphabetically by family name, and they feature several interesting content areas. First, there's a biography of the head of the family. Some bios are short, as little data is known, but we've tried to represent everyone with all the facts we've been able to gather. Next, there's a link directly to that family's volume in the searchable database. You can download a PDF of that person's entire family history, and finally, you can explore that person's family tree in Trees, our family tree software program. You can also sign up for a free guest account on AmericanAncestors.org to create a tree of your own. In addition to all the GU272 information on this site, you'll find perspectives on African American family history research from leading genealogists, columns that delve into different aspects of African American family history research, and guidance on how to begin or continue your own genealogical journey. If you have specific questions about the GU272 project, if you're a GU272 descendant who would like to be interviewed, or if you're interested in supporting this project financially, please contact GU272 at nehgs.org.